'Twas the night before Christmas, and somewhere in the house, the game's apprentice was waggling his joystick and clicking his mouse. Back with another review of Evercade. There's 12 games on this one that I've never played. Is the Renovation Collection a cracker or a sprout? Will I be less harsh in poem form? Let's find out. I'm not going to read the blurb on this one because it simply doesn't rhyme, but Renovation Products was formed in 1989. Some of the games on this are pricey and weren't released in the West. Still, here they are, all 12 games, ranked from worst to best. I enjoy watching wrestling as much as Fred Durst, but of all of the games, this feels like the worst. This game is hardly pleasing to the human eye. The highlight is launching your opponent into the sky. Some games are so bad that they're fun, but sadly that doesn't apply to this one. It's so slow and hard to get into a groove, you're lucky if you can even pull off a move. My expectations were low, old wrestling games all feel the same, but this surpassed them all by being a truly awful game. This one started okay, but then as I feared, the controls for this game are just really weird. It becomes annoying when the enemies are chasing. You can drive in all directions but only shoot where you are facing. Granada's technical problems just feel like a scandal. It throws more units at you than even it can handle. Any fun I was having, all this lag destroyed it. 2 words to sum up this game are simply avoid it. This one seemed quite interesting when I found out what it was. It's an RPG cross-action platformer, simply just because. The RPG side is pretty fugly, platformers a little more impressive, but how much the camera is zoomed in is definitely excessive. You've no idea what's coming and you're constantly attacked. With how small the distance on the screen is, there's just no time to react. Don't bother with this rubbish, it's really not much fun. The only real achievement is it's 2 shit games in one. A platformer shooter that feels pretty quick, but the action taking place is hardly very slick. When running up some stairs, the camera shakes like crazy. Enemies on repeat just feel really lazy. The colour's pretty ugly, not an interesting design, and the explosions send the frame rate in a spiralling decline. The music is alright, but the sound effects are lousy. 10 minutes with this one and I was feeling pretty drowsy. And now we come to an interesting section. This was the first game I'd heard of on this collection. I had high hopes for this one and multiple queries. All I knew about it is that it had spawned a series. Unfortunately then I played it, and like it I did not. This one's a clunky platformer that offers too much plot. The gameplay is much slower than the game that was prior, and the way they tell the story is just absolutely dire. The story might be interesting, but it's just the slowest read. It doesn't let you skip it, and you can't increase the speed. I took this time to get some chores done and drink a pint of ale. I'll read about it on Wikipedia if I need to know the tale. If you wanted to continue the story, let me make this loud and clear. You've got absolutely no chance, mate. The second one isn't here. In terms of fixing all the problems, this game doesn't even try. But now you've got 2 characters, but you probably wonder why. Still, it's slightly better than the first one, at least it gets going quicker, but the dialogue is as slow as ever and the action's hardly slicker. The whip is cool at least, I guess. It can be somewhat fun, but honestly this series sucks. They should have stopped with 1. An isometric shooter that tries to show off tech. In this one you're hunting enemies whilst in a giant mech. You can switch your weapon loadouts basically on the fly, shooting enemies on the ground and also in the sky. It controls a little weird, but stick with it is my advice, and level variation is always pretty nice. Eventually, this situation though simply becomes obscene, another case of not being able to handle what's on the screen. When it comes to the presentation, I'm not a fan of the style. The main characters sure look good, but everything else looks vile. The overworld looks horrible, it's like someone had to spew. It often feels like being an episode of early Scooby-Doo. Battle mechanics aren't much better, although things can hardly worsen. You can attack, block, use magic too, but you can't move your person. The wizard has to stand there like he's got some broken limb. His magic's only useful when they walk right in front of him. Still, it's not the worst JRPG that I have ever played, and it's not like there's a ton of them on the Evercade. Now let me start by saying there's better pinballs on this device. If you find yourself playing this one, then you didn't take my advice. Maybe it's the first you played because you're such a silly noob, or maybe you're stupidly committed to making a retro game YouTube. Still, bad pinball games are better than a lot of games on here, but the janky scrolling when the ball moves feel like drinking too much beer. It seems like there's just one table. If there's another, I'm at a loss. I can only assume you progress by beating this stupid boss. To open up the boss area takes an age and destroys your soul, and as soon as you get in there you end up straight back down the hole. I've spent ages trying to beat it, but progression must be slow. If there's another table on this one, most likely I'll never know. This one is quite interesting and feels Diablo-like. Your character has a block as well as a long-range strike. The music's pretty awesome, but I'm not sure how it became. It feels like it'd be better suited to a Sega racing game. The difficulty is tough, yeah it's hardly Dark Souls, but most of the time you'll find yourself battling the controls. The design is isometric, which makes things pretty trying. Aiming diagonally with a D-pad will leave you frustratedly crying. I imagine with 2 people it would be a lot more fun, but I played it on my Todd, just me, player 1. Almost my top pick, as the gameplay is easily the best, but let down with the death level restarts that I totally detest. You can shoot and change your speed, but nothing is more fun than sending out your little robot to copy your enemy's gun. The game sounds great, but it looks even better. A total technical marvel is this sci-fi love letter. If you can get over the difficulty, you're simply having a blast. There's a great time to be had here in this game of futures past. Like the midwinter, this collection is bleak, but I still found my Evercade gem of the week. A good sci-fi shooter blasting enemies in space as you battle a computer to save the human race. A satisfying punch that your weapon does pack, nice sound effects, cool artwork and a decent soundtrack. It's fast, it's frantic, but the ship handles well. You'll die over and over, but you'll likely never dwell. The Evercade has lots of shooters, many just aren't fun. Sol-Deace is pretty sweet though, I might try and beat this one. Playing the Renovation Collection was mostly a chore, and with that it will reflect in my score. While some games were good, just nothing was great, and I really hate cutscenes that force me to wait. You may not agree with the things that I'm saying, but not much on this collection is really worth playing. One thing I'll say that's definitely worth praising is while the music is good, the box art's amazing. There's not much on this collection that I'd ever play again, so that's why I'll score this a 5 out of 10. Well, that's it for this week. I'll catch you next time. In most of my videos, I don't usually rhyme. I'll be back with a new year with something less shite. Happy Christmas to all, and to all, a good night.